All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live, and what a guest we have coming on today. He is the author of Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, none other than the co-producer and executive producer of The Wrestler, Evan Ginsburg. What a guest he is to have coming on here. So let's waste no time. Let's bring him in.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's an honor to have you on here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So you first started wrestling, I believe. You first started liking wrestling from flicking through the channels in the early days of the WWF. Am I right?
That's right. Well before you were born, 1972. I was home on a rainy Sunday, just like we have today in New York. And I was bored. This was before the internet, before cell phones, before video games, before anything. And just looking for something to do. And I have this UHF dial, it was called. And I start fiddling with this dial, literally with my hand, not even a remote. And there's all these foreign language channels and arts channels, PBS we call it. And all of a sudden, I see this big, monstrous guy pounding on this Native American Indian. And I'm like, what is this? I didn't even know what it was. I was a kid, and I had accidentally discovered WWF wrestling. And it turned out it was Chief Jay Strongbow, who really was an Italian American playing an Indian. And he starts doing this herky jerky war dance, and all of a sudden he's chopping this huge guy down. And, I think it's real. My mouth is open. I'm a kid. And, I just sat there like hypnotized through the rest of it and made a mental note. When was this show on? And I started watching every week and starting to learn who everybody was. Or I would call it, they were like Marvel superheroes and villains, larger than life. And from there, I discovered there was wrestling from Los Angeles at the time. There was wrestling from Florida, and it was all on TV. And, it was amazing as a kid. And I begged my father, who was a New York City taxi driver. I said, Dad, please, let's go to wrestling. And he takes me to Madison Square Garden, June 24th, 1974. And I walk into the garden, and the first thing I think is, wow, it's in color, because we had a black and white TV. It was, this is primitive back then. So, again, there's Killer Kowalski and Nikolai Volkov and the Valiant Brothers and Fred Blassie and Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales. And you're a kid. These guys are 10 feet tall to you. And it was amazing. And we started going regularly, and it was some of the best nights of my life, going to wrestling with my dad. And it became a lifelong addiction, more than a hobby, because I ended up involved in the business. But it's, wrestling, when done right, is an incredible art.
Absolutely. When you first saw it, when you first saw wrestling, did you think to yourself, "This is what I want to do"?
I never wanted to be a wrestler. That's the interesting. I was a skinny kid. I was. I never thought of myself as a wrestler, but over the years, I ended up doing heel managing on the indies, and that was a lot of fun. Getting on the mic and insulting the audience and getting a reaction, and getting involved in the match in a certain capacity. But I was never formally trained. We would tell the promoters, "Listen, no bumps. I'm not trained. I just, don't cripple me."
Yeah. So after you first saw all these kind of guys, who was the wrestler that you looked up to the most? Who was your favorite?
As a kid, I loved Chief Jay Strongbow, Gorilla Monsoon, and Bruno Sammartino was like a half god to us. In Italian households in America back then, people would have pictures of Jesus Christ, Frank Sinatra, and Bruno Sammartino. That's how popular he was. And today, sometimes people don't understand, he was not a great technician, but the charisma was off the charts. And he would walk down the aisle in a pair of tights, no pyro, no entrance music, nothing, just sheer charisma. And we loved this man. And when he was getting pummeled, we felt it because we were marks. We were blue collar, working class, middle class, working class. It was a different audience back then. Back then, you had the Italian strongman Bruno Sammartino. You had Dominic DeNucci. You had the Hispanic heroes, Pedro Morales and Victor Rivera. You had Irish Davy O'Hannon. You had this Polish strongman, Ivan Putski. It was very blue-collar, ethnic. It was a different product than today. Today, you go to a WWE show, there's a lot of rich people there. Those tickets are expensive. It's a different, totally different audience.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because at that time, I suppose wrestling fans were the kind of poor people, maybe from the countryside or somewhere where like that, where wrestling was made for the likes of, I know Bruno Sammartino was a big guy, but he was also recognized, he came from a poor family and stuff, and that's why people kind of liked him. And he was like everybody else, even though he was quite a big guy. So that's why
he was a hero to us because he came from nothing. He was a poor kid who lived in the country in Italy, and they had to hide from the Nazis, and he was like 85, 90 pounds at one point. They were literally starving, and he built himself up at the YMCA, with weightlifting and pasta and, old school, no steroids, no nothing. And he was a hero to us. And he was champion. He had 2 reigns. He was champion over 10 years. It was amazing run that he had.
With the owner of Vince McMahon, the original, like the first ever Vince McMahon Senior, he made Bruno Sammartino pretty much who he was, because it was going to be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers until there was an injury or something, and Bruno Sammartino stepped in, I believe.
Yeah, Sammartino beat Buddy Rogers at Madison Square Garden in seconds, and Buddy Rogers had some heart issues, and he was already on the downside of his career at that point. But Bruno in the 60s and 70s was huge star, and he was making good money for that era. And but he took a pummeling. Those guys worked hundreds of dates a year. This was not like Roman Reigns wrestling 5 dates and getting $15 million. It was a different age, different schedule. I mean, Bruno was working 5 days a week. Some of these guys, we did a document. I was an associate producer on 350 Days, the documentary, and the title comes from the NWA champs were literally wrestling 350 days a year, and they wouldn't see their kids, they wouldn't see their wives, multiple divorces, and it was a very hard life. And today, a Roman Reigns or a Brock Lesnar, it's like a millionaire lifestyle. It's a whole different, game.
Yeah, and because we're speaking of Bruno Sammartino here, Baga asks, was there much shoot wrestling in Bruno's days?
No, it was all worked in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it wasn't as obvious, but it was worked like anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, but I think nowadays, there is a lot more of a work, maybe, with character work and stuff. But a lot of things that people don't understand was it was pretty much a squash match that you don't see now. If it was a normal, if it was a normal card on a match, Bruno Sammartino would destroy the guy in seconds, and then they would save it for maybe one of the bigger matches.
At the house shows, it really was unusual for it to be a squash match. They were a little nervous with Buddy Rogers that he was actually going to give up the belt. And Bruno was like, we could do this the hard way or we could do this the easy way. And it was over in seconds. And Kevin Nash as Diesel beat Backlund in seconds, heel Backlund back in the 90s. But that was very unusual. Usually on the house shows, they would go there 15, 20, 25 minutes and have, back and forth match because you didn't want to kill off the heel either because, you still
Yeah.
wanted to make money with him. And these guys would work the whole circuit. They would go Nassau Coliseum, Philadelphia Spectrum, Boston Garden. So you didn't want it out there that, Bruno beat the guy like that because the guy still had to move tickets. Back then, it was all about tickets. It wasn't about, there was no merchandise. There was literally nothing in the 70s. And Vince McMahon Sr. didn't believe in it. They thought, make it look like a legitimate sport, like boxing's cousin. And Vince McMahon, Jr., the son, he had a whole different take on it. Let's gear it towards kids. Let's do T-shirts and action figures and all of that. It was a totally different business plan.
Yeah, and a lot of wrestling fans like yourself who watched it in the WWE, WF days. Yeah, said that right. And like who were fans of the AWA, they were more interested in this is wrestling, like this is proper wrestling. So a lot of people didn't like Vince McMahon for what he done and turned it into an entertainment business, like he did with Hulk Hogan and stuff. What's your take on that?
I was there during that transitional period, the rock and wrestling and Hulkamania and Cyndi Lauper and Wendy Richter. I was there, literally there at Madison Square Garden. And in the beginning, it was very exciting. Piper Snuka, Sergeant Slaughter, Iron Sheik, Piper teaming up with Orton, Cowboy Bob Orton, Randy's father. I mean, it was very exciting, that era. But within 2 or 3 years, by 1986, 1987, they kind of, threw the baby out with the bathwater, and it was very little about the wrestling, and it was more about the gimmicks, the characters, the so-called comedy, the promos. It was more like you see today. And at that point, it wasn't for me, honestly, and I gravitated more to the NWA. We had the NWA right in Philadelphia, which was, a 2.5-hour ride or so from New York. And we'd go see Ric Flair on top, the Four Horsemen, the Russians, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express. They had guys like Jimmy Valiant and Superstar Billy Graham mid-card. These were WWF headliners. These guys were mid-card. They had so much talent in the NWA. And those were probably the greatest matches I ever saw from, 85 or 6 to 1990 or so. And then when they went to WCW, they were a shell of what they were also. But I saw the Terry Funk, Ric Flair, I Quit match, and some of it was just unbelievable. Flair and Steamboat, Ricky Steamboat was the greatest match I ever saw live in 51 years of attending. Flair and Steamboat, nothing touched that. They went like 35 minutes at the Meadowlands, and but even WWF had some amazing stuff too. I was there. Yeah, you'll appreciate this. I was there at Madison Square Garden when Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask had the legendary match. I was sitting there, and WWF was a super heavyweight territory because Bruno, Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, those champions, even Billy Graham. Billy Graham was 275 pounds. The guys they wrestled had to be really menacing and huge for it to be credible. So it was always super heavyweight guys. And all of a sudden, there's Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid doing moves we'd never seen. Again, there was no internet. There was, there were tape traders back then. You were lucky if you had a tape of guys like this, but it wasn't so accessible. You can watch wrestling every night of the week now on TV or on YouTube, the internet, whatever the case may be. But so Dynamite Kid was one of the great innovators in that style. Billy Graham, Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, Austin Idol, all these guys took from Billy Graham. So these guys were exact opposites, but huge, they had a huge effect on pro wrestling. Those two guys, believe me, Dynamite Kid. What he introduced, and sadly, he ended up in a wheelchair from it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that wrestling probably was wrestling when you're watching the NWA or the AWA. I know there was a lot of entertainment involved in it, but what Vince McMahon done was the kind of pop culture kind of style of it with Hulk Hogan and all. I know I wasn't. I obviously don't remember it, obviously, but I've watched some of it, and I think the kind of the AWA or Smoky Mountain Wrestling or that kind of style of wrestling is probably better than the WWF style.
Um, by the late '80s, I was pretty much done with WWF, but Bret Hart was great.
Oh
Shawn
yeah,
Michaels was great. Randy Savage was great. I mean, unfortunately, to get to that one great match, you had to wade through a lot of silly characters and Terry Taylor. They turned into the Red Rooster, which was
yeah.
ridiculous, and Dory Funk Jr., the NWA champ, is Horse Funk. I mean, they diminished a lot of great wrestlers from other areas at the time, and everybody had to be a character. And they destroyed a lot of great wrestlers that came in. Guys who headlined in NWA territories came into WWE, and they were on the undercard. Al Perez, guys like that, top-notch guys, and
Yeah.
they just did not do much with a lot of them, and it was sad to see because Les Thornton from England was a tremendous technician. He was in WWF late 80s or whatnot, and they did nothing with him. And this guy could wrestle circles around the guys headlining, So for a so-called purist like myself, the WWF product, even the WWE product today, is not so much for me. Although I appreciate Cody Rhodes, he could certainly wrestle. I appreciate Roman Reigns on the right night. He'll have a great match. And Gunther is totally old
Oh
school.
yeah.
Totally old school. I mean, that guy is a pleasure to watch. So, I'm not saying everything that WWE does is, I would not go so far as to say it's not worth watching, but you kind of have to cherry pick what is worth watching, because on a 3-hour pay-per-view, if you get 1 or 2 or 3 really good matches, you're lucky. You're lucky because most of it's about the run-ins and the promos and the comedy and the factions. I just want to see Gunther in the ring with some top-notch guy having a great match. Basically, that's the way I look at wrestling, because I come from that era where that was the emphasis, wrestling, So
Absolutely. Like even I would love to see Gunther actually properly wrestle. I think a lot of the guys even in them days on now, the people who can actually wrestle aren't allowed really to be on the proper show. It's more the people who are jacked up like Hulk Hogan or at the time Scott Steiner obviously. But you never really got to see much proper wrestlers wrestling on shows.
Well, Vince Jr., son, Vince had this body beautiful fetish where everybody had to look like a Greek god with a 6-pack of abs and, jacked, as you say. And that was not the case prior. I mean, some of the greatest wrestlers of all time I'd see live: Harley Race, Pat Patterson, Ray Stevens, Wahoo McDaniel. These guys had big beer bellies. Nobody cared. Nobody cared one iota that these guys did not look like they just stepped out of a gym. Vince changed it all where you better look a certain way or you're not going to get pushed. And Adrian Adonis, who blew up, he got much heavier. They turned him into a cartoon character because of it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince had this whole body fetish, and I don't think it's necessary. I thought Scott Steiner was a much better wrestler with the Steiners before he became this huge monster. He was a better wrestler. He was less mobile and less talented when he became this huge, His muscles had muscles, but it didn't make him a better wrestler.
Exactly. Probably made him a worse wrestler, but I'll get in some of our comments here from our viewers, and then we'll get into how you actually first started wrestling. But TZ's videos asked, how often or did you go to shows, Evan?
I would go 3 or 4 times a month back then. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was a whole different game. It was dirt cheap. At Madison Square Garden, it was $3 to $6 a ticket. And one night they announced that next month the ticket prices were going up to $4 to $7 a ticket. And the whole arena started booing because this was not a rich crowd. And that $1 made a difference to them. So we would go to Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, Westchester County Center, Sunnyside Garden. I'm talking 3-4 times a month. It was dirt cheap, and it was a great era. Today at Madison Square Garden, you'll have 3 or 4 or 5 shows a year. Forget a month, a year. And the prices are insane. They're getting $1,000 ringside, and it's a different crowd. So every year, WWE has been running December 26th. So that becomes a Christmas present for the kids. Or they'll run earlier in the year, and that'll be a graduation present or a birthday present. It becomes a special event because you're throwing down $500 even in the nosebleed seats to take the kids, park the car, gimmicks, food. You're talking $500 to $1,000. I'm not even talking ringside. That could be, absolutely insane. So it's a different world today. But back then, honestly, 3-4 shows a month, and I'm the senior editor over at ProWrestlingStories.com. I did a piece on the WWF scene in that era, and you can read about it. I talk about the different arenas, and that website. There's over 1,000 pieces on wrestling history, and we have British wrestling on there too. The owner, J.P. Zarka, he lived in England for the longest time. So he knows all about British wrestling too. There's more on American wrestling, but there's some interesting pieces on British wrestling on there too.
Yep. And Steve Savage asks, is acting a popular choice once wrestlers are too old to wrestle?
Today it is. Back in the day, it was more unusual. Professor Tanaka, Toru Tanaka did a lot of action films. A lot of these guys would Judo Gene LaBelle. I don't know if these names mean much to you. It's 50 years back, but these guys would get older and couldn't wrestle anymore, and they would go into acting as villains in action films, and that was usually the path. You guys had Lord Patrick Roach, Pat Roach, and he did a lot of great films.
Wiedersehen Pat, he was called Bomber.
Yeah, Bomber Pat Roach. Yeah, we have a piece on him on ProWrestlingStories.com, and so that was usually what happened. But now these guys are thinking, WWE household name, because they literally are superstars. People know these guys. So all of a sudden, The Rock is the biggest action film star in the world. And it's interesting, as they get older, all of a sudden, The Rock is doing serious dramas as opposed to just, shoot 'em ups. And Batista just did a film called The Last Showgirl with Pamela Anderson. And this guy's an actor. This guy can act. It's not, no action, no fighting, nothing. This guy is just playing a serious dramatic role, and he's very effective. I think Batista is the best of the bunch as far as actors. So, let's get past the WWE films. 19 out of 20 of them are direct to video, direct to cable TV, direct to airplanes or whatnot, B action films. But some of what Batista and The Rock are doing today, those are major, films, and it's a smart move because wrestlers will say to me, Evan, I'm always in pain. There's only so many bumps on my bump card. I have to get out of this. And I've had indie wrestlers say to me, I've had 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 concussions. I got to get out of this. I'm not going to recognize my kids at some point. And so acting is a legitimate path. It beats being a bouncer at the strip club or the rock club or whatnot, which a lot of these guys ended up doing after wrestling, or pushing a broom or whatever. Sometimes it's really not glamorous after it's all over. It's a tough business. There's no pension. There's no benefits. There's no health insurance. So you got to figure out plan B.
And Many Mully asks, has your love for wrestling taken you to many countries around the world?
The answer is somewhere in the middle. It's taken me to England. I did some work with John Feltham, FWA, late 90s. It took me to Mexico. I went to Lucha. I didn't work. I went to Lucha Libre shows at the Auditorio de Tijuana, and I saw a teenaged Rey Mysterio on the undercard. Nobody would ever imagine this guy would blow up and be a WWE world champion, multiple world champion. There was Rey Mysterio, and it was an interesting crowd because those guys believed. That was like a Madison Square Garden 1970s crowd, because a lot of the kids, a lot of people really believed what they were watching, that it was, a shoot. But great atmosphere, Tijuana wrestling, and I saw Vampiro on a lucha show. I still have a lot of friends in San Diego. You could literally, San Diego, California, you could walk across the border, walk into Mexico. That's how close it is, and catch some great Lucha Libre shows. So those were the only two countries outside of the United States that I saw wrestling.
Yeah, and you can tell by the way you're speaking, you're quite a big wrestling fan now. I've got some of the comments out of the way. I want to ask you, how did, from just being a wrestling fan, how did you first get involved in wrestling?
What I found is one thing always leads to another. I started doing a sheet called Wrestling Then and Now in 1990, and it ran for basically 20 years. And Killer Kowalski wrote for us and other legends, and we interviewed a ton of legends, and it even spun off into a documentary called Wrestling Then and Now. You can watch it on Tubi. And from there, a 50,000 watt New York City radio station, WBAI FM 99.5, famous station, very politically left, but we were not a political show. We were an arts program, and the host, Fred Giabold, he was an AWA and WWA fan from the Midwest originally. He had moved to New York, and he was one of my subscribers on my newsletter. And he was like, awesome. Evan, why don't you come on the radio show and do a wrestling segment? And I'm like, okay, 50,000 watt New York, I'll do that. Thousands of people hear it. So 16 years I was on that show. So what you're doing now, we would do from this radio station. We're calling up Sherry Martel, Lou Thez, Ivan Koloff, Bruno. We're calling all these legends, and some of them would actually come into the station, like Johnny Valiant, and it was a blast. We had Eddie Guerrero on, and he was crying because Art Barr had just died, and previously we had Art Barr on the show, by phone. So we had all these amazing legends, and sometimes I would just mark out and go, wow, Ivan Koloff, because I loved Ivan Koloff, you know? And it was a great experience. But like everything, there's a beginning, middle, and end. Fred literally died. The man died, and the show eventually ran its course. So it was And from there, I was booking. Johnny Valiant said to me, "Why don't you be my agent?" And I said, "I've never been an agent before." He said, "You're a smart guy. You could do it." He had more confidence than I did. So I stopped booking Johnny Valiant for indie wrestling matches, autograph signings, private parties, conventions, everything. And he was a comedian. He was doing stand-up comedy. He was a funny guy. If you ever watch the old Valiant Brothers tapes or whatnot, he was funny. So from there, I started booking other people. And so I'm sitting one day and I have Johnny Valiant and Nikolai Volkov doing an autograph signing. Nice gentleman walks in and he says, "Do you know who Darren Aronofsky is?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I'm a film buff. I've seen Requiem for a Dream. I've seen Pi, P-I, 3.14, math, not P-I-E, Pi." So I said, "Yeah, I know Darren Aronofsky. I'm a big fan." He says, "Darren has a wrestling project." And he says, quote, "You guys would be perfect for it." I said, "Okay." It's like, I give him my card. I don't hear anything for like 6 months. Next thing I know, I get a call from Aronofsky's office. "We'd like to meet with you guys. Bring any of the wrestlers you want." So I go down there with Tiger Khan, who wrestled for the Hearts, Nikolai Volkov, Johnny Valiant, Nikolai's legit shoot manager, Nikita Brezhnikov. And we just hit it off because Nikolai was the sweetest guy in the world. For a heel who got crazy heat, this was the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet. He was warm, he was friendly, he was funny, he was entertaining. Johnny, like I said, was literally a stand-up comedian. We're drinking, we're knocking down beers, and we're eating and laughing, and they're telling stories. And I knew it went well. I knew it. But then another couple of months went by and I hadn't heard anything. All of a sudden, I'm called into their office. "We'd like to offer you the position as associate producer on The Wrestler. You will be the wrestling guy. Anything we need wrestling-wise, you're going to take care of it." We agreed on a fee, and that was it. I said, "I'll do it. I'm not going to turn down an opportunity like that." So again, what happens is if you're in it, you could win it. Like what you're doing now. You're a young guy. You don't know how far you could take this. I mean, there are guys making livings off a podcast. You if you're good at something and you work hard at it, another door opens eventually. And when we did The Wrestler, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It came out in 2008. It's already 17 years ago. Time goes fast, but that was like a whirlwind ride, boy. I'm standing on set one day, just hanging out. A lot of the ROH guys I brought in. I did 5 or 6 casting calls. I brought in Ron Killings, Romeo Roselli, Necro Butcher. I brought in a bunch of these.
Did you bring in DJ Head?
Yeah. Well, Alpha was training Mickey, and Alpha brought in some of his guys. I think Alpha brought him in. I did 5 or 6 casting calls with 125 or so guys, so it's all kind of a blur 17 years later. But that was probably one of Alpha's boys. But so I'm standing on set, and all of a sudden Aronofsky gets this smirk, and he goes, "Evan, come here." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Walk up to Mickey Last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid." All of a sudden, I'm an actor. I'm just standing there, no makeup, nothing, no lines, nothing. Mickey walks over to me. He whispers in my ear. He goes, "Just improv it." like it's the most natural thing in the world. I've never acted in my life, not even in school, not in high school, nothing. Okay, so I do exactly what Aronofsky says. I walk around. He says, "Walk up to Mickey Last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid." The whole time I'm thinking, what am I going to say to him? Because we're improving it. So I'm like, well, what would I say to a legendary wrestler? He's playing a legendary wrestler. So I walk up to him and I go, "I loved you as a kid. I saw you at the Garden," meaning Madison Square Garden. "Can I have your autograph?" He looks at me and he's improving. He goes, What's your name? And now I'm thinking, we're improvising this, and I just go, Evan, how surreal this is. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. So he signs an autograph for me. We pose. It's in the trailer. 4.7 million people have seen this. It's in the trailer. That little clip with me. So I'm sitting at Lincoln Center's New York Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. The movie's finally done. It's the first time it's being seen publicly. And I'm sitting with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And all of a sudden, she's looking at the screen. She's looking at me. She's looking at the screen. She's looking at me. She goes, "That's you!" Because I didn't edit the film. I didn't know if I made the final cut. So later that night, Randy the Ram does that really poignant scene where he says to his daughter, "I'm just a broken down piece of meat." And I look around me and everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. And I'm like, we spent 7 years off and on working on this. I'm like, this works. It works. And we walk out and we're like mobbed with paparazzi. It's like the Oscars. This is one of the biggest film festivals in the world. Can we have your picture? Can we talk to you for a few minutes? And I'm like, to me, this is magic. I've made a living as a school teacher, and there you are in the middle of all of this. And, Mickey was there, and Marissa Tomei, and Evan Rachel Wood, no relation. So, yeah, it was a magical night. And I tell people that was the best night of my life. It was wild. I mean, we did other film festivals, but it wasn't on that level. There were 2,300 people paying $40 a ticket. And as the film ended, as the credits rolled, they gave us a standing ovation. And I just sat there and just like soaked it in. I'm like, this is unbelievable, to be part of this. And a friend of mine said to me, and I never thought of it, he said, Aronofsky putting you in that movie was his gift to you. He said, that's a little piece of, forever. That movie, 100 years from now, when we're both gone, both of us, and you're a young guy, 100 years from now, when we're both gone, people will watch that movie because Mickey's performance is incredible, incredible. And he won the Golden Globe, Best Actor in the World, and he lost the Academy Award, Best Actor, to Sean Penn that year. But he won Golden Globe. That's an iconic performance, and it would be hard-pressed to see a better performance than that. Aronofsky, interestingly, he did The Whale with Brendan Fraser, and that was a great performance. And I watched that, and I said to people, mark my words, Brendan Fraser is going to be nominated for the Oscar for this. And he also was not a big star at that point. His career had waned like Mickey's did. And, The Whale brought Brendan Fraser back too. So Aronofsky knows a great actor when he sees it. And Aronofsky was a regular kid. His mom was a New York City school teacher. He wasn't like some rich kid or anything. Just a talented, driven guy.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's so fascinating hearing all your memories and stuff. But back to when you were talking about the radio station and getting to interview some of these guys, were you never like shell shocked when you were getting interviewed likes of? I mean, were you never shocked when you're getting interviewed likes of some of the people who you looked up to, some of the wrestlers who you looked up to?
I find somebody could be the biggest star in the world, but if I'm not a big fan and I didn't grow up with him or her, I don't mark out as much. But if it's somebody from my childhood, like an Ivan Koloff or a superstar Billy Graham or Bruno, like I interviewed these guys and, I was a kid and, like I said, these guys were 10 feet tall and all of a sudden you're talking to them like a peer, like an equal. And it's like part of you is like, okay, I have to do the interview. And the other part of you is like, oh my God, this is Bruno. This is Billy Graham. This is Ivan Koloff. These were world champions. These were the giants, of the industry. So, yeah, I mean, if somebody said to me, do you want to interview Rhea Ripley? I wouldn't mark out as much because, I appreciate her talent. I appreciate her charisma, but I didn't grow up with her. I'm looking at her as an adult as opposed to a kid. So, yeah, like one day, it wasn't an interview. I actually got Muhammad Ali's autograph, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is Muhammad Ali. This is the most famous person in the world. In the world, bar none." Muhammad Ali was Muslim. The Muslim world embraced him. Muhammad Ali trained in Africa against George Foreman. That part of the world embraced him. And the technology had hit at that point, closed circuit TV, pre-cable. And the whole world knew Muhammad Ali. And he's standing there, signing autographs. And I'm like, my God, this is Ali. So, yeah, it's interesting how you react. I can meet the biggest star today, and I'm not as in awe. But if the guy's older than me and I grew up on him, and I have this like awe and wonder, yeah, then it's a different feeling. Absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
who's your favorite wrestler?
Right now, it's a strange one because I think this guy's quite underrated and not used enough. I think his name's Ludwig Kaiser.
Okay. I know him from WWE. Yeah. So if you interviewed him, you might be, oh my God, look, I love this guy. It's a different feeling. Somebody could be more famous than him, and you don't have that same feeling because he's not your favorite. Yeah, that was my experience with interviewing people. Yeah.
Yeah, and you like, for anyone that you look up these guys as heroes for themselves, they're just normal people. But when watching them on TV, you obviously look up to them as heroes. So when interviewing some of these guys, what were some of your favorite memories?
I interviewed Sherry Martel 3 a.m. 3 a.m. She got up to do an interview to promote her appearance. She was working in IndyCar. She says to me, I've been on the road 16 years. I didn't see my kid grow up. And it was very emotional. And she sacrificed for her art, for her industry. And when they did the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Sherry Martel, that was some of my audio footage that they used. And yeah, that was powerful. Like I said, Eddie Guerrero crying over Art Barr was very powerful. I one New Year's Eve, I was interviewing Lou Thez, like one of the gods of pro wrestling, and kind of like, wow, this is an interesting way to spend New Year's Eve, interviewing Lou Thez. And being on the road with these guys was wild as an agent. Greg Valentine, Johnny Valiant, Lou Albano, these were some of my heroes. And you're on the road with them and whining and dining and hanging out. And in my book, I write about Greg Valentine would sleep on my couch. Lanny Poffo would sleep on my couch. These were dear friends. One day, this is a funny story. We're going to an appearance. Greg Valentine's crashing by me. We walk out the front door. I live in an apartment building. All of a sudden, a car screeches. Guy gets out of the car. The driver goes, "You're Greg Valentine." And Greg goes, "Yes, I am. I'm Greg Valentine." Like, very deadpan, So these guys are tremendously famous. I would see Greg Valentine headline the Garden time and time again. Valentine and Backlund, Valentine and Tito Santana, again and again. This guy headlined Madison Square Garden, and now he's your friend and he's sleeping on your couch, and it's been a wild ride, all of this. And maybe decades from now you'll have a similar ride, because you got into this young and do quality work, but also promote and network. See, a lot of people, they have all the tech skills in the world, but they don't know from promotion. They don't know from networking. The right people can open up doors for you. And, you could be the next Jim Cornette or whomever. Jim Cornette was a kid taking pictures ringside, and he ended up devoting his entire life to pro wrestling. And making a good living at it and still making a good living at it. I mean, his podcast is a job. That's a living. So you don't know how far you could take this, but you're also going to find, like yesterday, I worked a wrestling convention as a vendor. What you're going to find is you're going to meet some of the most incredible people, wonderful people, colorful, charismatic, and you're also going to meet guys you wouldn't spit on if they were on fire. That's the wrestling business. You're going to meet some great people, and you're going to meet some ruthless people that you wouldn't leave your wallet out on the table in front of them. So choose carefully who you let into your life in this business.
Yeah, that's great advice. And when you were doing that radio station, interviewing some of the guys, and when you were doing your own podcast, how did it come to an end?
It wasn't a podcast. This was a radio station on a major New York radio station. It was a 2-hour arts program, and the host, Fred Giabold, happened to love pro wrestling, so he's like, "Yeah, invite these guys. Let's have them on." And he got sick, and then the poor guy died, and then the show kind of like went from one time slot to another time slot, and eventually it ran its course. I was on there 16 years, and Fred was on before that. Fred did like 20 years. So yeah, no show lasts forever. Nothing. Except for maybe Raw. Raw will be on forever. Yeah.
Yeah, and when that came to an end, obviously that was quite sad for you, because you've been there for so long and have interviewed so many wrestlers. But then after that, did you get into the movie business? Yeah.
Well, we did the movie Wrestling Then and Now in 2002. Low budget, micro budget documentary. You can still watch it on Tubi. Killer Kowalski, Nikolai Volkov, Homicide. Homicide's a great wrestler. He's in it. Don Arnold, who was before your time, top wrestler. So we did that on our own, and that was 2002. Then The Wrestler was 2008. Then a couple of years later, another Darren Antola, approached me to do 350 days with them. And Bret Hart and superstar Billy Graham, we bill as the stars, but also, big parts in it, Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, Paul Orndorff's in it. There's 36 wrestlers in there. And I don't want to bore your audience reading off all 36, but many of them are gone already. This movie came out 6-7 years ago. I lose track. And for example, Orndorff is gone. George the Animal Steel is gone. King Kong Mosk is gone. The Wolfman, he was way before your time. A lot of these guys, Ox Baker, tremendous stars, headliners. But if you watch this movie today, I would say half the cast, Pretty Boy Larry Sharp, they're gone now. Superstar Billy Graham, the star, him and Bret Hart, we build as the stars. He's gone. And that's the beauty of film. You're preserved on film forever. And not all of these guys you're going to see in a lot of movies. Bret Hart's done a lot of work, obviously, but, most people were not, following the Wolfman around with a camera. We got him on film. So we're very proud of it. And the distributor, Gravitas, they got it seen all over the world, millions and millions of viewers. And critically acclaimed, and we're proud of it because it's from the heart. Basically, these guys are pouring their guts out. We wrestled hundreds of days a year. Bret Hart said to us he wrestled 330 days a year as WWF champion. Greg Valentine said he wrestled 320 days a year as the Intercontinental champion. So how do you keep up a marriage and a family when you're never home? It's brutal. So that's really the theme of the movie. It's not a bombardment of facts and titles and title changes. That's been done to death. This is these guys just pouring their hearts out about their lives. There's one scene in the movie, Stan Hansen and all these guys, they're pointing to like every part of their body that was broken in the ring, every bone in their body has been broken, and it's not an easy business. But the final scene in the movie, spoiler alert, final scene, they're saying I would do it all over again. Lanny Poffo said, I saw the world on the promoter's dime. I traveled all over the world. I would have never gotten to these places. Lanny's gone too. You know, you preserve these people on film, and you could always watch it and enjoy it. And Lanny,
Yeah.
you know, that genius gimmick was really not a gimmick. He had an encyclopedic memory. He could just recite an entire epic poem or whatnot. I saw show tunes, songs. He knew every word. He really was a sharp guy. Good friend. When he died, I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
He took care of himself. He was conscious of his health. He had a heart attack, and you know, it's like we were shocked. Same with Nikolai. Nikolai took care of himself, but it was a rough life. You don't know the toll it takes. Nikolai said to me when he was on top, him and the Iron Sheik, he said one night he was so exhausted, he fell asleep with his eyes open. He didn't know it was humanly possible to be that tired. He said, my eyes were open and I was asleep. So, you know, the toll this takes on the human body. And also back in the day, these guys wrestled in smoke-filled arenas. The fans all sat there smoking cigarettes. It was a different world. That's not healthy. Thousands of people smoking. You're in the middle breathing this in, you know? So wrestling isn't for longevity for the most part.
Yeah. And that's so cool when you talked there about, you know, having this on video, because so many wrestlers that have passed away, you've given these guys a platform to talk about what they wanted to talk about. Like for me, with interviewing people, I've interviewed a lot of older wrestlers, and some of them have died, unfortunately, and their families also always say that this is like gold to them. They don't realize it at the time, but it's gold to have these memories of their family, and that's awesome. But I want to talk to you.
Absolutely. Let me just say something quickly. Um, what you're doing is meaningful because when somebody passes, that family can go to your show, and really it's like a living memorial. Somebody's talking for an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long you go, and there they are. And it's like they're in their living room, they're alive again. And that's meaningful, and that'll be there forever. And even if they're not famous, you know, it's still for their family, their friends, their fans. That show is meaningful, no matter how many people view it. And you do quality work. I mean, I've been on many podcasts, and you know, I know when somebody knows what they're doing when they don't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been on podcasts where there's 5 guys and they're all talking over each other and nobody could hear anything, and it's just a waste of time. You know, you do a quality show, and it's only going to get better because you'll have that much more experience. And the worst thing anybody could do is have like a list of 50 questions and robotically read them one by one, because that's not real. You have to listen to the guest, and you know, it's human interest. It's not just a bombardment of dates and facts and title changes, like I said before.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I can't say that I didn't do that, because at the start I thought you might have just had to have a whole line of questioning on it. But you're right; it does make you sound like a robot. So maybe now, when I'm talking to you and people like that, it's better maybe to talk about the topic that we're talking about and ask questions about that, instead of just having a full list of questions.
Yeah, because many times the interviewer, he's not even listening to the guest. He's thinking about the next question, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not even like a conversation. It's like police suspect, police, you know, because it has to be like a real conversation and human interest. Like I said, if you're on the road 300 plus days a year, you know, that takes a serious toll on your mental health, your physical health. These guys back in the day, they would be hurt, physically hurt, and they would just wrap it up, no matter how bad the injury, no matter how painful, and get to the next town, down some painkillers or whatnot, do whatever they had to do to get through the match, and they're not repairing the injury. They're not, taking time off to let it heal, and it only gets worse and chronic because they're scared to lose their spot. That's not the way a business should be. Somebody was like, you have a tear in your muscle, you have to repair it or whatever it is. So, to really understand this business, it's beyond you won this match, you lost that match, you won this title. There's a whole backstory that's more interesting than the minutia that some of the fans fixate on. You're from the UK. Dynamite Kid, I'll tell you a story, true story. Dynamite Kid, when he lost the tag belts with the British Bulldogs, he was so terribly injured, he could barely walk. They practically carried him to the ring. They paid him $25, and he lost the WWF titles. And like I said, the guy ended up in a wheelchair. I mean, that's the backstory, that you're going to do what the promotion tells you to do, even if it's not good for you, your health. And he did not end well. Not at all. Financially, physically, nothing. And this guy really was revolutionary. Yeah.
I agree. He was better than any other wrestler. Well, maybe not, but some of his matches, like with Tiger Mask, and matches like that, he was. I think he's unmatchable. One of the best wrestlers ever, I think, but he's so underrated. But I want to talk to you about the maybe 350 days. So you mentioned there, like, wrestlers would wrestle 320, 330 days. So I just think this whole documentary and film was so cool, because wrestlers really did wrestle this much, and I give a good way of describing it. So how did it all come around?
Well, like I said, the NWA champs literally wrestled 350 days. 350 days. And sometimes, even in WWF and NWA, they would do 2 one-hour Broadways the same day. Backlund and Morocco had 2 one-hour matches the same day. They would afternoon, matinee, and evening. Can you imagine the schedule and the toll on the body? So basically, because of the reputation of the wrestler, I was approached by Darren Antola and David Wilkins and the director, Fulvio Cesare, to serve a similar role, associate producer, get them the footage they need, get them the photographs they need, get them the interviews they need, get, anything wrestling related, plus do publicity for the film. So at first I was resistant, because I was like, you're never going to top the wrestler. I really was debating it. And then when I was talking to Darren Antola, he says, I love Roddy Piper. I love Paul Orndorff. I love Jimmy Snuka. And it's like, it was like we were coming just from the same place. It's like, I said, this guy is going to do a good job with this. And he did. If you look at these reviews here, Chris Jericho said the documentary was riveting, So we're very, if people in the industry appreciated it, Bret Hitman Hart. I hope you all go out there and support a great film. So, you can watch this. You can watch this on Amazon Prime, Tubi, whatnot. It's out there. It's not hard to find. And if you look at the ad over here, so Billy Graham's gone, Paul Orndorff's gone, Angela Mosca's gone, Jimmy Snuka's gone. They're all in the ad right here. So again, you're proud to have, put their feelings on film. I mean, there's tons of their matches on film, but these are their, talking from the heart, what they went through. Wendy Richter in the film, she's still alive. Wendy Richter said, I couldn't have a baby. I was on the road every night. What was I supposed to do? Put the baby on the ring apron?
Yeah.
So This is not your typical wrestling film where, they put the journalist down at the wrestling school in an arm bar, or you go to the fan's house and he's got 1,000 action figures. That's not what this is. This is coming from a whole different place. If you really want to understand the good, the bad, and ugly of the wrestling business, that's what this film is.
Yeah, like there's documentaries like The Dark Side of the Ring and things like that. But this movie, I think, is absolutely incredible. Just the fact that it isn't about stats, it isn't about facts about wrestling, as you said. It's more about the toll that happened to these wrestlers and what really happened to these wrestlers, which is incredible.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and within that movie, what were some of your favorite memories shooting that movie?
Um, I was more on the promotional side. I wasn't doing the actual interviews. I was getting the footage, the match footage, the photographs, the anything basically that they needed. It was going on the road with them promoting it was a lot of fun. We were out with Greg Valentine constantly promoting this film, radio stations and podcasts, and those were great memories. And again, to preserve some of these guys who never, you're on a WWE show or whatnot, you're playing your character, you're not pouring your heart out. Wrestlers hate the word fake because they'll say, my hip replacement wasn't fake. My 2 divorces weren't fake. My kid's not talking to me because I was never home. That's not fake. They hate the word fake. And that's what you'll get from this movie. Abdullah the Butcher is in the movie. You see him on the poster. This guy's in a wheelchair now. I saw Harley Race in a wheelchair. I saw Lou Albano in a wheelchair, Lex Luger in a wheelchair, etc. So on. I mean, the toll that this business takes. Gravity isn't fake. You're a wrestler. Okay. Let's say you throw a 300-pound wrestler in the air. Gravity, the guy's going to land. The bump, the pain isn't fake. I was at a convention yesterday. I won't name names, but some of these old wrestlers, they're hobbling around. Their bodies are bent, arthritis. And, you wake up on a damp, rainy day and you're 50, 60, 70, you're going to feel those bumps. This is what a lot of people don't understand. So, when indie wrestlers say to me, I have a ton of concussions, but I'm coming back, I'll go, why? Why? You want to be there for your family. You want to be there for your kids. It's addictive. It's addictive. You're in the ring. There's the indie promotion is like a surrogate family. The promoter, his wife, they're like mom and dad. I get it because I'm around it. I'm still around it. But it's not worth your physical or mental health or your marriage or this business. It's better today that the stars anyway. The stars are making bigger money on a lighter schedule. That's an improvement. But on the indie level, you could get awfully hurt for awful little money, or no money. Guys have died in the ring. This is what people don't understand. Yeah. I'll tell you a crazy story, man. Crazy story. I booked Tommy Rich for an indie shot a couple months ago. And he still wrestles, but generally tag teams, 6-man matches, because he's pushing 70. And he'll cut promos, great talker. He's sitting there selling his gimmicks, and all of a sudden, a indie wrestler collapses in the ring and dies in the ring. And Tommy was distraught. He's like, I've been in the business 50 years. I never saw this before. You know, I never saw a guy die in the ring. The guy was like 400 pounds, and he collapsed during his match. And they're resuscitating him. They're crying. They're hysterical. The guy was gone. They're trying to resuscitate him. It didn't work. So, yeah. So, they don't like the word fake because people die in ring or get crippled.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Droz. One wrong move, 1 inch. Darren Droz stuff in WWE. Yeah. So
Yeah, you're
respect this art, because you're off by 1 inch or 2, you could get hurt or killed. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right. And I interviewed a guy. It was only a couple of days ago. I do wrestling, so I was doing a seminar with him. He's an old British wrestler called Marty Jones, and
I know
he
Marty Jones. Yeah, very famous. Yeah.
yeah. So he wasn't actually he couldn't stand, but he was sitting on the sidelines trading this. So after I'd done a 5-10 minute interview with him, and he was telling me that he doesn't like the word fake because he says that this wasn't fake. What is going on with his knees that he can't stand, that wasn't fake.
Yeah.
It's not fake that that he was wrestling so much, and it wasn't fake of what has happened to his body and the wear and tear of his body.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. His knee replacements weren't fake. His pain isn't fake. You can't sleep because you're in pain. That's not fake. It's it is what it is. It's a brutal business.
Yeah.
Boxing and MMA, UFC, same thing. Guys punching or kicking you in the head. That's not fake.
Nope.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get to some more of our comments here. So Wrestling Insider asks, did you ever get to meet Ric Flair, and what was he like?
I met Ric Flair. It was at the bar after an NWA show in Philly. I asked him for an autograph. He was perfectly nice. He signed it. Pleasant, smiled, happy. I mean, that was my one experience with him. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you. But the one time I met him, he was great.
And Wrestling Insider follows up with another question, saying, who's the best wrestler from New York City? Jimmy Fallon has to be up there.
Who wrestled in New York City? Jimmy Valiant wasn't born in New York, but he was a huge star in New York. I'm trying to think who's. I would say Johnny Rodz was based out of New York. I think originally he was from Puerto Rico, but he's still living in New York, and he trained tons and tons of big stars, Devon Dudley and Tommy Dreamer and S.D. Jones. And Johnny Rodz was as great as anybody. His one-loss record wasn't great because that's the way WWF used him, but tremendous wrestler, respected to the point that they put him in the WWE Hall of Fame, Johnny Rodz. So I would, if I'm thinking of a New Yorker, or who I think of as a New Yorker, he's been here for 50 years or whatnot, I would say Johnny Rodz.
Yeah. And Manny Molly says, I love New Yorkers. Your accent is cool. Outside of wrestling, my favorite New Yorkers are Impractical Jokers, Sal, Q, Murr, and Joe.
Thank you. It's funny, when I go to California, people will go, you're from New York, because I have a Brooklyn accent. I have a New York accent. I've been to England multiple times. My cousin is the dean of a prestigious college, Edge Hill University, and right outside of Liverpool. And when I go to England, people are like, you're from New York, because I have the accent. So I've also taught for many years. And when I'm in England, they'll go, you're not an English teacher. No way, because I have a New York accent, and you guys speak the correct English. I speak New York English. So.
And Steve Savage says, it must have been so amazing to get to chat with these legends.
Yes. When you make a guest comfortable and they really open up, it's really remarkable, because they've been to hell and back, basically. I was at Madison Square Garden. I'll give you an example. Stan Hansen is wrestling Bruno Sammartino. Stan Hansen hits him with the clothesline. Bruno goes down, and it just didn't look right. I just said, he's really hurt. He's really hurt because, and his neck was broken. The guy's neck was broken. So Bruno was the money guy. He was the champ 5 days a week. He was the headliner. So this guy's in the hospital with a broken neck in a sling, you know? And Vince Sr. is like, Bruno, we need you back. The guy's got a broken neck. 1976. And Bruno comes back and wrestles Stan Hansen at Shea Stadium. There's like 40,000 people there. Well, that's what they announced. They tend to exaggerate, but it was a big crowd. And this guy came out of a hospital bed, you know, because they needed him because he's the draw. And, you know, if I said to you, your neck is broken, you're in the hospital, you have to do this podcast. You know, look, I'm in the hospital. I got a broken neck. I'm taking a week off. You know, it's like wrestling's insane. It's an insane business. Today it's better, but okay, so Charlotte Flair was out for like a year or whatever, a year or more. She's not the star she was before she was out that long. Somebody else takes your spot. Rhea Ripley's the #1 woman wrestler there now. It's not Charlotte anymore, and it's obvious. There's I think it was on WWE Unreal. I could be mistaken. There's so much content where Triple H says to Rhea Ripley, "You're our, you know, you're our #1 draw. You're our woman star, you know." And I'm sorry, my wife was talking to me for a second. So anyway, you lose your spot. So they're not anxious to stay out too long. Believe me.
Yeah. And then Minnie Molly asks, has any wrestler ever lost their temper with you?
I'm trying to think. Has any ever lost their temper? Lanny Poffo was a dear friend. He would sleep on our couch. My wife would cook for him, and my wife's Korean. She'd make him Korean soup and whatnot. And Lanny was saying to me, I want to retire, Evan. I don't want to be on the road anymore. And I was like, Lanny, you know, you're still young, you're still healthy. And I could see, like, he got upset. It's like, you're not listening. I need to get off the road. And half of it is for the mental health, because you have so many great and terrible memories in this business. He'd go to a convention and he'd be like, I love this guy. He was very fond of, like, Jay Lethal, for example. And then he'd be like, I hate this guy. He didn't like Bam Bam Bigelow. You know, he said Bam Bam Bigelow would pin me. He wouldn't say thank you. That's considered disrespectful. You know, I'm putting him over. And so he'd go to these conventions, and sometimes he would have mixed emotions. Johnny Valiant said the same thing. Johnny Valiant said to me, I feel like a whore in a whorehouse. They walk around, they pick whose autograph they want. And, you know, I don't really, it's not creative. I want to be on a stage. I want to be acting. I want to be doing comedy. So it takes no talent to sign an autograph. So I don't remember. I honestly don't remember anybody like quite losing their temper, but situations like that, I could see the business caused them a lot of pain along the way, and it comes out sometimes. It's just the frustration of it all. But all in all, it was interesting with Lanny. He said, I have no bad feelings towards Vince McMahon. They created the Genius. I wrestled Hogan. I wrestled Hogan in front of 4 million people on Saturday night's main event. I beat Hogan on a count out. He said, I wrestled Hogan up and down, the whole circuit, including Madison Square Garden. I saved my money. So Lanny had mixed emotions. He didn't like Adrian Adonis. Same reason. He was putting over Adrian, and Adrian wasn't grateful or whatnot. And there's certain people that set these guys off because you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, a lot of egos. Johnny Valiant said to me, he gave up his day job. Vince said, come back, manage the Dream Team, Beefcake and Valentine. He comes back. They have a great run, the Dream Team. Next thing you know, he's not on the booking sheet. He's like, where am I? Where are my bookings? They basically wrote him out, didn't give him notice, didn't tell him anything. Meanwhile, there's the mortgage, there's the electric bill, the phone bill, the food bill. And he lost his house. And Vince was his friend in military school, no less. They went back a long time. Ruthless business. And, it's like, you could be on top one day and the next day you're sitting at the Elks Lodge signing autographs or whatnot in front of 82 people, it's, there's some real highs and lows to this business.
Yeah. You're sure right about that. And one of the things, like when I was watching The Wrestler, you mentioned they're like losing their house. You saw Mickey Rourke, the actor of Randy the Ram Robinson, I believe. This is a photo of you and him. I just wanted to bring it in. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So you and Mickey, how did you first meet Mickey Rourke?
Well, when we were doing the movie, I was introduced to everybody, of course, and he was always very gracious, very friendly. I never saw him say no to a fan's autograph or picture. Good guy, tortured artist. I mean, he was a huge movie star in the 1980s, and he left the movie business to get punched in the face as a boxer, professional boxer. This is unheard of. The guy was a sex symbol, big movie star. He's getting punched in the face. This doesn't even make sense. So he, when I met him, the guy couldn't be any nicer. And I took them, this is a funny story. I took them to CZW, Cage of Death. Basically, for 6 months, I took Mickey and Darren, the executive producer, the money guy. Some people get confused with these titles. The executive producer is the money guy. Associate producer is the wrestling guy. I was the wrestling guy. So I take them to CZW, and they're going through panes of glass, thumbtacks, the whole deal. It was insane. It was insane. Fire. So, Mickey is a star. Aronofsky's, a huge name. So we're backstage. And it's like a mass unit. They're sewing these guys up. There's blood everywhere. It was crazy. Am I allowed to curse on your show?
Go ahead, yeah.
I could clean it up if you want. I don't know your...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I said to Mickey, I go, what did you think of this? The CZW Cage of Death. He goes, quote, it was fucking wild. He's a tough guy. He loved it. It was a crazy evening. And it was quite a ride, the whole thing, and great memories. And in my book, I write about the making of the wrestler. That's part of what I do in my book. And some stories have never been told before. And many times, and I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm just saying what people have said. They'll say to me, that was the best movie ever made on professional wrestling, and And some people will say it's one of the best sports movies ever made. So we spent 7 years and none of us got rich from it, believe me. This was a $6 million indie film. Now, $6 million sounds like a lot of money to the average person, but basically that's the food budget on the Avengers or Spider-Man, you know?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money. You're paying all these people, you know? So none of us got rich from it. But Mickey ended up being a heel in one of the Iron Man movies, and he got $1 million for that because he was hot off of The Wrestler. That was really his payoff for The Wrestler. I mean, he got paid, but he didn't get paid big money. None of us did. So, but we're very proud of it, and it'll be there forever. And the title of my book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, is about me juggling 3 careers. I was a wrestling agent, school teacher, filmmaker. I mean, I've done a bunch of films, you know, not just the few I mentioned today. So and I'll continue to write books and make films because that's your legacy when you leave this planet. And some point we all will. You know, what's left behind is your legacy, and very proud of all of it. And I don't want to do schlock. I don't, you know, WWE will pump out 50 movies and, you know, 45 of them you don't need to see. You know, it's pumping out content. It's create art, don't create content.
Yeah, I agree. It's very true. And when I was watching the Wrestler, I noticed a lot of people think that the Wrestler is based upon Jake the Snake Roberts.
No.
Who would you say the Wrestler is most like of Mickey Rourke?
It was no single wrestler. That's just a myth. It was a composite of many of the stars. But what people don't know is Mickey spent a lot of time with Greg Valentine, who was not in the movie. Mickey and Greg, you know, you could see Mickey had the fanny pack and the bleached blonde hair and the look. You know, that was more a Greg Valentine type than a Jake Roberts type. I mean, if you really think about it. But it was no single character. And Greg financially is okay. You know, Greg's not living in a trailer. Greg's in Vegas, and you know, it's a whole different story. But I have nothing but respect for Marissa Tomei, who was great in it. Evan Rachel Wood was great in it, the daughter. Mickey was unbelievable. And Aronofsky, to his credit, for 6 months, every weekend, I took them to something wrestling related. That convention, I'll tell you the story behind that convention scene. I took them to a convention in New Jersey. It was like the WWE Hall of Fame. The Samoans, Tony Atlas, Nikolai, Iron Sheik, Moolah, Mae Young. It was Johnny Valiant. It was like a dozen WWF legends, and there was nobody there. There were more vendors and wrestlers than fans. It was sad. And Aronofsky kept going to me. He's a good guy. He kept going, Evan, where is everybody? Where is everybody? Because he saw these guys headline pack Madison Square Garden. Aronofsky and the executive producer, these were, you know, rock and wrestling era, Hulkamania era fans. So I was helping with the screenplay. I wasn't writing the screenplays. I was looking at the wrestling content to see that it rang true. So, for example, in one of the original versions of the screenplay, Randy the Ram is blading himself, and everybody's watching. And I said nobody would be watching. It's just another day at the office. Nobody would care whatsoever. So they took that out. So, you know, I'm reading various versions of the screenplay as it progressed to the final one, and there was no autograph scene in there. There was no convention scene. But all of a sudden, after we went to that convention, it was written in because it was so pitiful. It was so pitiful. And if you look at that scene where I'm with Mickey, Randy the Ram, That's all my merchandise on those tables. I set up that whole thing like a convention. So technically, I did a little set design also. But yeah, man, it was a wild ride, and almost 20 years later, I was at this convention yesterday. Two people walked up to me with a copy of The Wrestler and asked me to sign it. I was very flattered. It's almost 20 years later that it's meaningful to people still. And I was happy to do it. I didn't charge anything. It's just flattering that, it moves people. It moves people. I watch, to this day, I watch WWE, AEW, ROH, New Japan. I'm not one of these guys, there's been no good wrestling since the territories. That's not me. But I'll tell you, I watched that cash grab in Paris a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago. Man, I was numb. Until Sheamus and until Sheamus and Rusev came out. It was a nothing show,
I agree.
Yeah. So, you want to feel something. You have to care. A wrestling match is like a little play, like theater in a squared circle. You have to care. This guy you want to win. This guy you want to lose. Why? If you don't care, it's just you forget about it the next morning. If you put right now, okay, we say dollars, you say pounds. If you put 10,000 pounds in front of me, I couldn't name all 6 of those matches because it was meaningless. It's like fluff, it's gone for the most part. I mean, I remember Logan Paul and John Cena, obviously. That was a good match, but most of it is gone. It's like, you want to create something that's there forever, that's meaningful. So that's why you put your heart and soul into these projects. The Wrestler was 7 years. 350 Days was 6 years. We're not pumping out stuff like in 3 weeks to be on a network,
Yeah. We've got a lot of questions coming in about The Wrestler, so we'll just get that in. Is The Wrestler your biggest project? Asks Wrestling Insider.
Oh, by far. I mean, Mickey was up for the Academy Award, and he won the Golden Globe, and Springsteen's song was huge, the theme song, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah, that was by far the biggest. But 350 Days has been seen by millions of people. If you look on YouTube, Gravitas ran it with commercials, and millions watched it. So, and it got really great reviews for the most part. So, I'm proud of that as well.
Yeah. And Scenic Spots asks, wasn't it nominated for an Oscar? I think
Mickey
it was
nominated for the Oscar, not the film itself. Mickey was nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah, I think it was robbed. It should have got an Oscar.
Thank you.
A lot of people actually say that in a lot of movies you can tell you don't forget that they're movies, but in that movie you forgot that it was a movie. It was like it was based on so many different stories. It was just incredible.
Look, like I said, I've seen guys headline Madison Square Garden, retire, and have crap jobs, pushing a broom, working the door at the strip club, the rock club, whatever the case may be, bouncers. They don't end well. And, I love Jim Cornette. The Midnight Express was my all-time favorite tag team. Jim Cornette didn't have a great reaction to The Wrestler. We don't all live in trailer parks. Understood. Bret Hart retired with his money. Nikolai did. Lanny Poffo did. Not everybody's living in a trailer park, but that was the story we were telling. And some do. Some don't end well. Many don't end well. We're not saying this is every wrestler. Aronofsky's films all lean dark. The Whale, the guy's dying through the entire movie. He's morbidly obese. He's dying the entire film. He doesn't do, light sitcoms. It's not his style. He does edgy stuff, and he rolls the dice. And if we did a movie on a wrestler who made a ton of money and ended up happy. It's not a movie. There's no story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I want to ask you a wee bit about this moment. So how did you first start acting in The Wrestler?
I, I was just standing on set, and Aronofsky got like this smirk, like this, look on his face. He just got a light bulb and he threw me in. I was wearing my street clothes and no makeup, nothing. That's what I wore to the place. Next thing, they didn't put one bit of makeup, nothing. They just threw me in, and we improv that scene. So that's how I started acting. And the guy was nominated for an Oscar. Can
Yeah.
you imagine my first acting role? I've done more since then, but how that's like a lotto win. You couldn't dream of that happening, and it happened. It bizarre, surreal, really, really surreal. And like I said, if you watch the movie, I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. Even that's surreal. Yeah.
And yeah, that's so awesome. You got to have your first ever your first ever memory of acting was with this guy who was nominated for an Oscar. That's incredible.
And he won the
Um,
Golden Globe.
awesome. And so then the wrestler obviously showed a lot of great. It showed the real physical aspect of wrestling, like the physical toll and the emotional toll. So, Carrigan District Pool League asks, what are the most common issues wrestlers face physically and emotionally as their wrestling careers come to an end?
Okay. Watch 350 Days. They led this sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. WWE uses the term superstars, and they headlined major arenas. There was a party every night. There were, I don't like, Lanny Poffo hated the term ring rats, let's say groupies. There were groupies, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Next thing you know, your body gives out. You can't do it anymore. Like Ivan Koloff was as great as anybody that ever stepped foot in the ring. And all of a sudden, it catches up to you and you're in physical pain. You can't do it anymore, literally. Okay, so sometimes they became heel managers or whatnot because they would just talk, But so you're headlining Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden, Philadelphia Spectrum, the biggest arenas in the world. Next thing you know, you have some crap job, low pay. You're just a guy taking orders from some, boss who may not be that nice. You went from celebrity to guy, any guy on the street.
Yeah.
Look
Kind
at
of
the
saw that.
scene in The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke at the meat counter.
That's what I was
That's it. It's like, you headline Madison Square Garden and you're pushing a broom. That's your job. You need the benefits. You need the health insurance. That's a huge, huge shift. And not everybody can handle that. Not everybody can handle that. It's I've heard stories where some guy, an ex-wrestling star, will have some crap job and somebody will go, "Didn't you used to be?" And this is very humbling, like, and they're almost embarrassed because they're doing some, they have to pay the bills. They have a family, and the promoters did not take care of them. Listen, the other year, superstar Billy Graham, who Hulk Hogan borrowed everything from, okay? Superstar Billy Graham dies needing a GoFundMe, needing help. Same year, Virgil died. Bushwhacker, Butch dies. They all needed GoFundMes at the end. How disgraceful. WWE, billion-dollar company. Take 1/2 of 1% of your huge profits and take care of these guys. I'm not saying support them with weekly checks. I'm saying if they're in need, help them. You shouldn't need money to pay. You shouldn't need a GoFundMe to pay your hospital bills, to save your house. They had to save Paul Orndorff's house. The money Paul Orndorff generated for them. They had to do a GoFundMe to save Kamala's house. Kamala was a headline guy. It's disgraceful. They were not. Here's another thing. You hear the fanboys go, they all, whenever you say all, it's usually wrong. They all pissed away fortunes on wine, women, and song. No. Most of these guys in the 70s and 80s did not make fortunes, and some pissed it away, whatever they made, and some didn't. Like I said, Nikolai ended well, Bret Hart ended well, Lanny ended well, others ended well. They didn't all piss away fortunes. Don't side with the billion-dollar corporation who should have had pensions. Listen, as a New York City school teacher, we work 180 or 190 days a year. Full benefits, full pension. Okay? These wrestlers are wrestling 300, 320, 330 days a year, 350 days a year. They don't deserve a pension. They don't deserve benefits. What? How is that not your job? Oh, they're independent contractors. How is that not your job if you're there hundreds of days a year? I mean, not today in WWE. It's changed, but I'm saying back in the day, the legends. So one of the unsung heroes of pro wrestling, you may not know the name, Irish Davey O'Hannon. He was a regular at WWF in the mid to late 70s. He was working for the New York Times, famous newspaper, and after he retired. So he got jobs for Baron Cicluna, S.D. Jones, Dominic DeNucci, all these stars, headline, big name wrestlers, and he did more for them than Vince McMahon Sr. or Vince McMahon Jr. It's the business did not take care of most of these guys. Today it's different. Brock Lesnar comes in every couple of months, makes a fortune of money. That's a different scenario.
Yeah, I completely agree, and MWF Wrestling agrees as well. Or one of our collaborating people, they said, so true, not taking care of their talent when they retire. It's so right.
There's a reason these guys are at wrestling conventions, hawking their autographs and photos. They need the money. It's and they're not getting a fortune to appear either. So yeah, and some of them are not in good physical shape.
Yeah, and thanks so much for coming on. And as we're coming to the end of the podcast, because we've went a wee bit over time here because of all your incredible stories. It was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anytime.
I know you. Yeah, and I know you want to promote your book, author Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. So just explain what that is. As we're coming to the end.
It's 300 plus pages, 100 plus stories on my life in wrestling, in film, making the wrestler. There's many stories in here on making the wrestler, working with Mickey Rourke, and also being a school teacher, juggling basically 3 careers over many, many years. The good, the bad, and ugly of all of them, and being on the road with these legendary wrestlers. And on the cover of the book, there's Nikolai and Jimmy and Johnny Valiant, and these guys, Killer Kowalski. These guys became friends, dear friends, and most of them are gone now. So you want to present them as people, not as, oh, Killer Kowalski held this belt and that belt and that belt. Anybody that knows the history of wrestling knows that Killer Kowalski would be on the Mount Rushmore of great wrestling heels. You have time for a 30-second story? This is a funny story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Killer Kowalski leaps off the top rope, accidentally hits Yukon Eric's cauliflower ear. Accidentally. Rips his ear off in the ring. It's a true story. Killer Kowalski was the sweetest guy in the world, nicest guy in the world, big heart, but he was playing a heel. So he goes to the hospital to visit Yukon Eric, whose head is bandaged because his ear was ripped off.
Yeah.
Kowalski looks at him and he gets this funny thought. He goes, he looks like Humpty Dumpty. And he starts laughing. So Kowalski doesn't realize the other guys in the room were legitimate newspaper writers. And back then with kayfabe, there you go, kayfabe. Back then, they thought it was real and that Kowalski was coming to the hospital to mock his opponent after he ripped his ear off. So this is in all the papers the next day, and he became the number one villain in the whole world overnight. Overnight. And I saw him in the 70s, 20, 25 years later. He's still on top. He had an amazing career, and he was a good friend of mine, Killer Kowalski.
Absolutely. And this has been an incredible interview. So, just to promote you here, I want to show some of your socials. So you can follow Evan Ginsburg on Twitter or X, now it's called, at Evan _Ginsburg. You can check out his Facebook account, at Evan Ginsburg, Evan.Ginsburg. And also, you can check out the Old School Wrestling Memories website. Here's the link for it. I'm not really going to read all that out. It's a bit of a mouthful, so you can just
Evan
tip it up
Ginsburg's
there.
Old School Wrestling Memories on Facebook. They'll find me.
And then you can check out 350daysthemovie.com, so you can follow all them stuff. And for the last question for you, Evan, what's next for Evan Ginsburg?
We are going to keep making movies, writing books, teaching, just do positive things, and until you run out of time. I When you're in the creative process, follow your muse. I'll leave you with this. You're a young guy, and you can hopefully this will influence you. I'm not young anymore. What happens is you realize what's really important in life: family, friends, following your muse, doing what inspires you, like you're doing. You love wrestling, helping people, and attaining some degree peace of mind, spirituality. It does not have to be formal religion. Peace of mind. And if you could do those things, you could do great things. I could say to people 10 years from now, I knew you when, you had this podcast and now you're a big star in WWE or whatnot. You never know how far you could take things. I mean, if you do good work, and like I said, promotion and networking. Networking is very important in wrestling. It's who you know. You look at WWE and it's always somebody's wife or girlfriend or buddy. That's very important in this business. I'm not saying it's right, but that's the reality. So in indie wrestling shows, you shake everybody's hand, you introduce yourself, would you like to do my podcast one day? And some will say yes, some will say no, some will say maybe, and it's a numbers game, and the contacts you meet may help you in some capacity along the way. So yeah, I mean, look, Billy Robinson, Les Thornton, Dynamite Kid, these guys all came to America, Japan, around the world. These guys started small, and Adrian Street was a big star in America
Yeah,
also.
exotic agent Street.
Headline guy. Yeah, so you don't know how far you could take these things. Stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been an incredible interview. Thanks so much for coming on. It's really fascinating as well, hearing all your stories. So thanks so
My
much for coming on.
my pleasure. Anytime. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
So what an incredible interview there with Evan Ginsburg. And let's talk about what's coming up next on our future shows. So on our collaborative channel with the NWF, who were just commenting in there on NWF Rewind, we'll have studio taping 29, fully restored, live on Thursday, September 11th. That's NWF Rewind. Make sure to check out that. And then DD Crooks from NIPW will be coming on the NWF Fast Forward from Pure Filth. That'll be an incredible one to check out. And next for my show, I have coming on from the AIWF. He's the AIWF World Champion, Paulo Trieste. He has such an incredible in-ring presence, so it'll be cool to have him on. And then for the future Northern Irish wrestling shows, we'll have NIPW at the Grand Social in Bangor, and we'll have Culture Night at a central gas station at Belfast Grand Central Station. Sorry, actually in a train station, which is awesome. And then here's the poster for NIPW. This is what the venue looks like in the Grand Social. And then Foil Rumble, the second ever Foil Rumble, will be there, and this will be a very very big show. Look at the Look at the crowd for that. It's really big for a indie wrestling show. So we'll have loads coming up, and you can get your tickets for these shows. You can get your tickets for NIPW at nipw.sumupstore.com. You can get your tickets for Foil Rumble at for the Tuned In Project at www.tickettailor.com. That's a mouthful. And yeah, so that'll be awesome to see that. And again, you can follow Evan Ginsburg on his socials, on X and things like that. So make sure to check out all of Evan Ginsburg's stuff. That was an incredible interview with him, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one for NWF Fast Forward. So it's goodbye from me.